Hi, everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about visas for parents. So, we originally named this live as Parents Visa, but I will be offering a variety of solutions, not necessarily classic Parents Visa. Before we start, let me introduce myself. My name is Yulia Moiseeva, and I'm a registered migration agent. I run my migration practice here on the Gold Coast, Queensland, Australia, and I run my practice with my small team. We are here local, and some people are interstate. So we catering a lot of visas, except protection and asylum seeker visas. So this is not our specialty. All the rest, including citizenships, appeals, and ministerial intervention, we can assist with. So our aim for our practice is to start with strategic planning for the case, and then, of course, assist with visa applications where needed. So talking about parents' visa, let me explain some ground rules first for this live. So I will provide some information. If you have any questions, you can ask them in the chat. Once I finish my talking, I will be able to attend those questions in the chat. So let's begin with classic, so to say, parents' visa. Usually, if you're looking at bringing parent for short term or long term, you need to be mindful on certain things. First of all, if you are looking at permanent residency parents visa, two main criteria has to be satisfied. First, the child who is going to be the sponsor will have to have at least permanent residency or Australian citizenship in Australia. So children on temporary visas will not be able to be a sponsor for parents' visas. Then, for parents' visas, in the classic scenario, balance of family test must be satisfied. What does that mean? That number of children totally for your parents, majority of those children will have to be in Australia as a permanent resident or Australian citizens. So, for example, if you say have a parent who has only one child yourself, and all of a sudden this parent will become partnered with another person who has another two children themselves, and only yourself is in Australia, that means that balance of family test will not be satisfied. So you need to be mindful of that. And it does not matter whether children are small or over 18 years old. The matter is number of children. And pretty much as long as your parents are together, if it's a step parent with their own children, so as long as those people are together as a family, all the children will count. If these people cease to become a family, then obviously only your biological parents' children will count. So when we're thinking about parents' visas long-term, short-term, my suggestion is always the following. If, for example, the child is coming to Australia on pretty much any visa, the very, very first step, regardless of child status, except if the children, say, apply for protection visas, that's going to be very high risk that parents will not be allowed in the country. But if we're talking about normal scenario, say the child will come to Australia as a student or as a skilled migrant or as a temporary migrant on employer-sponsored visa. So in any of those scenarios, the first step is to come to Australia and invite your parents, say, on the visitor visas. Usually we use tourist stream, and you don't have to use family sponsored stream in the majority of cases, regardless of your parents' situation. They may be pensioners, but you still provide financial security, financial documents from your side. So in the standard scenario, I would recommend to use visitor visa tourist stream for parents. And then it's going to be the option for 3, 6, or 12 months stay. So majority of parents, especially if the parents are young, they will not stay for so long. And then you may test and trial 3, 6, or 12 months on the visitor visa to see how the parent will adjust to Australian reality, whether they like it at all. So this is going to be very easy option to test it and not as expensive. So once, say, you understood, okay, parents are happy to relocate for longer or relocate for good, then you can consider classic scenarios for parents. So in a nutshell, we have two streams: contributory visas, where you pay significant amount of money before the visa is granted, so not at the beginning of the process. And then it will be non-contributory visas, where you pay not as much, but the processing time is stretched for longer. So as of 2024, 2025, the processing of parents' visa contributory take around 12 plus years since lodgement. So it's a long time. And you putting your application in the queue, and basically within this period of time, nothing happens. These visas, subclass 143 is contributory parent visa. So parents of any age can apply for this visa, subject to eligibility criteria, balance of family test, children, etc. Or 103 non-contributory parents visa. So for those of two visas, contributory and non-contributory, for these parents, as I said, parent of any age can apply. And then regardless if the application is made from Australia or from overseas, especially if you're applying from Australia, you will not get bridging visa with 143 or 103 application. If we're talking about aged parent visa, currently the age criteria is 67 plus years, at least for one applicant at time of lodgement. So for those visas, parents will have to come to Australia. Again, usually it's on the visitor visa or e-visitor visa. And then they will have to lodge those applications being in Australia. So again, we have two options: contributory visa, 864, or non-contributory visa, 804. The processing time pretty much may be similar. If it's contributory, we're talking about 12 plus years. If it's non-contributory, it may be 15 plus years. The beauty of lodging aged parent visa from Australia is that with lodgement and acknowledgement of this visa, the applicant will get not only bridging visa that allows them to come to Australia and stay and wait for processing, but also magically work rights as well. I'm not sure why the government decides to give work rights to applicants over 67. It's a mystery to me. However, if the parents will be willing to contribute and work or run the business, so that can be an option. In this case, please be mindful then when you're applying for parents visa, unless your country allows you to have reciprocal Medicare, there will not be any access to Medicare until the visa is granted. So for those who are planning to bring aged parents visa and keep them parents in Australia, you really need to consider private health insurance. And the older is the parent, the more costs you may incur with this insurance. So you need to be really careful assessing the situation. Then, as I said, consideration time is really long, and aged parent visas will allow parents to stay in Australia on the bridging visa. So some parents will have to travel, and you will be able to change bridging visa A issued at lodgement into bridging visa B for travel purposes. And this bridging visa B will be issued for a maximum of 1 year. So the parents actually can lodge the application, get themselves a bridging visa, go overseas, and then they will have to come back before this bridging visa B finishes, because you cannot extend bridging visa B while the applicant is overseas. So you need to be mindful on the dates. And you can repeat the exercise of coming and going on the bridging visas, renewing bridging visas as long as you want. So that's not a problem at all. If we're talking about applying for permanent residency through parents' visas, especially when you're considering 143 or 103, and the processing time is 12 plus years, I would suggest while waiting, you can potentially look at tourist visa, where you can request a visa with validity of 3 years and stay up to 12 months in one stay. Then the person will have to leave for 6 months, usually parents living overseas, and then coming back for another year. So you will be able to have 2 years out of 3 on the visitor visa, which is pretty cheap option to keep parents here. At this time, if you're going to be lodging visitor visa, it for 12 months stay, it's going to be compulsory to undergo medical examination for parents. And that's a good point, because in this case, you will know if something is wrong with the parents. We actually had the case where one of the parent was diagnosed with cancer at the very, very early stage, thanks to that examination for the visitor visa. Otherwise, I would never find out that they actually had cancer, and he was treated well and everything went well, which is really good to know. But the visitor visa is only 3-year span, 1 year to stay, 6 months overseas. So if then your parent and yourself collectively decides that you are ready for another option of the visa to keep them staying in Australia, so the other option can be potentially 870 visa, where it's a 2-stage process. So first, the sponsor, who is permanent resident Australian citizen, usually the child of these parents, has to be assessed, and this assessment will attract assessment of income. So the figures are around 84,000 a year. It can be either be this child with that sort of income, or it can be a combination of child's income and either child's partner or, say, siblings' income in Australia, where at least 50% of that income still belongs to the child. So you need to be mindful on income assessment and requirement for 870 sponsorship. And another notice is that the child actually is taking a legal obligation as a sponsor. So, for example, if the parent by any chance will go to the hospital and incur the massive bill, then the child will take the burden to pay this bill because of the sponsorship obligation. So you need to be careful with that. It will be also compulsory health insurance on 870 visa. And this visa can be arranged for up to 3 years or up to 5 years in the application. So, but maximum 10 years. So the opportunities can be 3 times 3 years or twice for 5 years. If, for example, your parent finishing the duration of 870 visa, they cannot renew from Australia, they will have to go overseas. You'll have to start sponsorship application again and showing your income. And only then, once the sponsorship is approved, they can relodge another 870 application as an example. So you need to be mindful and plan ahead what are you going to be doing with the situation. Let's talk about single parents. So if, for example, you have only one parent left, then it depends what's this parent situation. For example, if it's a single parent who is actually considering finding a partner in Australia, you'll be surprised for that age category of parents over 50. It actually can maybe easier for them to find a partner in Australia, because a lot of people at this age group will be looking for new partners for the variety of reasons. So you can arrange visitor visa for your parent and then see how they go in Australia. And if they are happening to find a partner, then you can look at the partner visa, because there is no restriction on age for partner visa. There is no restriction or requirements for English, so they can actually execute their relocation to Australia through partner visa instead of classic scenario of parents visas. If you have dependent aged parent, aged meaning 67 plus years old at time of lodgement, dependent meaning that this parent will be dependent on you on their basic financial needs, meaning their living expenses, their expenses for everyday life, like clothes, electricity, and their food, so basic expenses. And you can show this dependency for at least 3 years before the application is made. Then you can be looking at age dependent relative visa. Beauty of this visa, subclass 838, is that again this visa will be lodged from Australia. The applicant will receive bridging visa, and the applicant also will receive access to Medicare. So that is very, very important when you have aged relative and this relative does not have a partner, and they are financially dependent on you for 3 years before the application is made. One note, parents visas and age dependent relative visa are lodged on paper. So we're still doing postal application with heaps of documents in the envelope. So currently, the system does not allow to lodge those applications online, so only by post. So you have to allow time remaining on their visa, especially if it's aged parents or age-dependent relative, to lodge the application and get it acknowledged. So for these cases, we would recommend to prepare the application before parent actually coming to Australia. And once they are in Australia, you can post the envelope with all the documents and payment of government fee to allow sufficient time for the government to open the envelope and acknowledge the application. So that would be the steps we recommend. Talking about other options for parents who lodge 143 visa, so contributory parents visa, that will be processing for good 12 plus years, and they are still young, so not 67, and they potentially may consider coming to Australia for employment. So why I would still recommend to lodge 143 visa, just to have a backup plan. So if the parent is eligible or parents are eligible to lodge 143 visa, I usually recommend clients to consider the option of lodging, because the processing takes so long. And while you're going to be exploring any other potential options, your application still be in the queue. And believe you me, the time flies so quickly. So this application may be processed, still in 12 years time, but you will not acknowledge how quickly time will fly. So the options for parents who are pretty much any age, but they will have certain skills, qualifications, and work experience. They will have potentially at least vocational English, IELTS 5 or equivalent PTE, and they will have a sponsor from Australia to work in Australia. So there you will have two options. On employed sponsored visa subclass 4A2, it's a temporary visa that allows skilled applicants any age, so there is no age restriction whatsoever, to come to Australia and work in Australia for up to 4 years. So this visa can be renewed. And we had the oldest applicant, age 65, still renewing his 482 visa. So that can be the potential option to bring parent in Australia and get them to work while 143 application is processed, and they pretty much will save this amount of second government fee payable before permanent residency will be issued while they work in Australia. So that's a good strategic planning. Or if this parent, say, have a pretty high rank position and the salary will be over high salary threshold in Australia, currently is 175,000 a year plus compulsory superannuation. So this figure will change since the 1st of July and will be indexed to a high amount. So if the parent, any age, coming to Australia and work on a higher salary, and this salary will be indexed every year, so the employer-sponsored visa salary will have to be adjusted accordingly. So this applicant can then transit to permanent residency, obviously getting the English at competent level and showing high salary with age concession. So in this case, the parent can transit to permanent residency through from 482 to 186 permanent residency visa if they are working on the salary with over high salary threshold, and pretty much they're living in Australia and working for Australian business. So that option is available. And then if that's the case, you may think whether you actually need to launch 143 visa or you proceed through this pathway where the parents will be coming in working in Australia. We recently transferred managing directors to open the businesses the same way through employed sponsored visa on a high salary. So that pathway may also potentially be suitable for parents who run the business and who wants to relocate to Australia. Another option for aged parents with skilled or semi-skilled occupation is to consider DAMA 482 visa. So it's employer-sponsored visa, but employer must be from the certain DAMA region where there are concessions for age. Majority of cases, you may consider transition to permanent residency or application for permanent residence visa 186 or regional visa 494 before the applicant turns 50, and in some cases before the applicant turns 55. So you can still fit a lot of young parents into this category. So in this situation, the parents will have to look for work and for employers who will be willing to sponsor them and give them full-time contract. So it's a standard classic 482 visa where still the parents can independently, without even touching parents' visa, classic parents' visa, still transit to permanent residency. So as you can see, it is a variety of options for the parents to come and stay in Australia. But the main recommendation from me will be for the family to consider first test trial on tourist visa to see how they go, whether they like it here, whether the parents would like to stay here longer, or at the moment they're going to be happy to just travel now and then basically execute the variety of visas. Depends on your personal circumstances in the way that suits your situation. So there is no scenario that fit everybody, but I described the major scenarios we are discussing with clients and implementing for the clients in our practice. I have one unrelated question today about 189 visa. If you're still there, I already had live session dedicated for skilled visas, and it should be available on the channel, so you can have a look and ask your questions there, because today's live is dedicated to parents visa options. So I'm not going to be discussing any other visas today apart from parents visas. So thank you very much for watching. I appreciate people who come and watched online live. For those of you who would like to explore any scenarios for parents visa or visas for parents, you can share this live with your friends. You can watch this live with your parents, and then you can come and see us for your personalized consultation. Thank you very much for watching.